Here's something that might surprise you. The skills that come most naturally to you, the ones you barely have to think about, those are probably the exact skills that could command premium rates in your consulting practice. But here's the problem. Because they come so easily, you might not value them at all. You might even dismiss them as not that important. And that mindset could be costing you thousands of dollars and years of confidence. My name is AJ Riedel. This is Thriving Through the podcast, where each week I have real conversations with seasoned, successful self-employed consultants about what it really takes to build a profitable, sustainable, and fulfilling consulting practice. Today, I'm talking with Kit Friday, a marketing consultant who spent 15 years in consulting, but only the last 5 years feeling truly confident in that role. Kit's journey is fascinating because she ran two parallel careers for years. A more traditional path as a paralegal and private investigator, and a creative path as DJ, television host, and production company owner. She excelled at the marketing work, but didn't take it seriously because it came so naturally. Sound familiar? In our conversation, Kit opens up about the mental barriers that kept her from fully embracing her consulting expertise, how she learned to trust her innate gifts, and why it took years to overcome the self-doubt that holds so many of us back. If you've ever questioned whether you're really qualified to charge what you're worth, or if you've struggled with imposter syndrome, despite having clients who get real results, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Today my guest is Kit Friday. I'm delighted to welcome you to the show. Welcome, Kit.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Kit, tell me about your path to self-employment.
My path to self-employment has not been linear, that's for sure. So I feel like my path to self-employment has been kind of two parallel things running against each other. I started my career as a paralegal and a private investigator in my early 20s, and I really enjoyed the work that I did at the time. I'm very analytical. I really liked the strategy and the detail work that it required of me. But at the same time, while I was working as a paralegal and private investigator, I had another career path that I was executing at the same time, which was in marketing. I have been a professional DJ for about 22 years. I have had a television show. I owned a production company for quite a few years. And, this I feel like really represented the creative aspects of my life that I wasn't getting from my real job. And, I think so I always felt that, I'm a very left brain, right brain person. And so I felt that I was meeting both of my needs that my brain had by kind of having this like parallel path going on. And, when I got to, and the funny thing is the more marketing aspect of this path, I I didn't take it as seriously because it came easily to me. And I think that in my mind, I put it as something as less important than this other more structured path I was taking. I got to a certain point in my career, I was probably in my late 20s, I guess, that I really wanted to find a way to make those two aspects of my working life intersect. And that's really, I think, where I started treating the marketing work that I was doing in the more creative job aspect of my life as something that was equally important and of equal weight. And when I started doing that, I I felt like I got freed from some of the things in my own brain that were holding me back from investing in, maybe something, a job type that would be more challenging. So I started kind of casting my net about. I got hired to write for a really successful lifestyle blog. And from there, I was hired directly into the marketing space where I worked with Silicon Valley startups, all different kinds of companies, and really started honing in on my strengths as a marketer and really applying and finding that in the pursuit of this more creative job aspect, I didn't have to shed the other elements of my former career that I really liked a lot, this deep analytical strategy work. So, for me, I think when I when I finally made the leap to be 100% self-employed as a consultant, it was scary, very scary. But I think that I had finally overcome myself. And so, and once I overcame that self-doubt and I started applying these very real world examples of my success, and that those successes were the product of me and not necessarily a company. And so it really helped me to restructure my thinking process. And so I have been a consultant for a long time, about 15 years, but I think it's really only been the past 5 years that I've really felt confident, felt the confidence of really stepping into that role of myself.
That's a great story, and especially of how long it can take for us to kind of grow into who we really are and to gain complete
Yeah,
confidence. I think it probably took me about the same amount of time when I became a self-employed consultant.
yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I have a lot of friends who are consultants and small business owners. And I think that that was one of the things that I wish I had talked more about them with of this, how do you find the strength of self, this grit, this fortitude that you and to trust that you can lean back on it, right?
You said something that I see so often. You said that the marketing aspect, you didn't value it quite as much because it came so easy. And I think that that is such a natural tendency is that because it comes easy to us, we don't think it really is that important or something that other people would value. And in reality, that's really probably our sweet spot because it comes easy to us and it doesn't come easy to a lot of other people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, we're each equipped with our own unique gifts. And I think, exactly what you said of when we doubt, the doubting the things that come easy to us, it took me a long time to realize the value of these innate things that I bring to the table. And I have such, I feel so much calmer in my life and my practice now that I do. You know, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but yeah, I know what I'm bringing to the table and I feel really good about it as well.
So tell me a story or two about the biggest challenges that you've faced building your practice and how you've overcome them.
Oh, yeah. Well, the biggest challenge was myself.
Huh?
And, like I had mentioned before, it was believing that believing in myself and what I bring to the table. And, also really learning to assign value to what it is that I do, that there is there's quantifiable things that it could be made into. I feel like, you know, I think especially with women, we have a lot of inferiority complex issues. And that is something that I've been struggling with since I started my career when I was in my early 20s. And it has been, it has kept me from pursuing opportunities that were amazing. It has held me back from saying things when I knew that I was communicating the right thing to be doing. And, maybe perhaps some of it's getting older as well. And, you develop more maturity and more faith in yourself and all of that. But yeah, it was a really long learning process to address that self-doubt in myself. And I still have it, but I I spend a lot of time going on walks. I'm a very reflective person. I'm good at touching my feelings in a way to figure out if this is instinct that is driving this or if it's anxiety that's driving it.
Hmm.
And that has been a really powerful thing for me to measure my anxiety with. Is this real or is this real but not really real?
Right. Is it real or is it a voice in my head trying to make me question? So, how do you
Yeah.
tell? How do you tell instinct versus anxiety?
For me, and personally and also within my business practice, I find that my anxiety thinking tends to come from a hot place in myself. I feel it more in my chest area. Like it's, you have that kind of visceral, like your hackles start to go up because you start to enter this kind of anxiety fear mode. And, um, I also notice with myself with anxiety thinking, it tends to be really cyclical. I notice that I start, instead of, you know, when I'm addressing something that's coming from an intuition place, it feels much calmer. The voice feels calmer. And rather than go into a cyclical thinking pattern, I find myself moving towards a problem solving mindset. So that right, just being able to notice those initial feeling things has really helped me as a consultant figure out if it's anxiety that's driving this spaceship or if it's actual, this is a legitimate thing that I need to deal with. Let's do it calmly.
Tell me a story about an early time when you recognized an intuitive thought and acted on it.
Yeah, sure. I was, hmm, sorry, let me think of how to frame this. A very early client of mine um, ran a marketing agency. And so my consulting role was a little different than it normally looks. Um, but from the get-go, there there wasn't a in my practice, I'm very into goal setting. I think that that's a really important place for us to start our activities from so that we have something to measure success against. With this particular client, we could never lock in something that was solid, something that could be a keystone for us with which we operated around. And because of that, there was a lot of, very panicked anxiety messages. Our communications were very erratic. And, in that place, I was so young or so new as a consultant that I had not built up the personal and professional boundaries that I needed for not only for myself, but for my client as well, right? You
Hmm.
know, I want to be a calm voice for them. I want to be a source of, I want them to trust me and feel safe with me. And when I'm coming from an anxiety place, when they're coming from an anxiety place, it's you can't meet in that end goal. And because I was so new to consulting, I look at that project, and one thing that I really regret about it is I felt that anxiety drove the decision making that I made, as opposed to me operating from a place of best practices. After every client I work with, I send them a survey because it's important for me to understand how they felt about the project and if they felt heard and if they felt, considered and all of that, right? Like, but I also do a self reflection survey every project. And in that, I go into the things that went well, the things that could have gone better, challenges that we had faced during the project, and lessons that I learned. And the reason I do those surveys is directly because of that client, because I walked away feeling that I had failed them because I wasn't showing up as my best person. And it's my responsibility to be the person I want to be showing up with my clients.
So that experience has been a positive for going forward because it's helped you to learn how to you learn the importance of those boundaries, right?
Absolutely. And no lesson is ever lost to us. You know what I mean? It was at the time when that project ended, I felt really devastated, but I couldn't let that devastation speak to the quality of the work that I bring. So I had to look within myself and see how I contributed to it. I think that self-reflection is a very important part of being a successful consultant. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and examine your processes. You should do it all the time.
Yeah. I like your that you do a survey with your clients and a survey with yourself.
It's been so helpful. I have actually it's you see patterns emerge, you see both negative and positive patterns. It really it really helps a lot, especially right after the project's done. You sit down and do it. You don't and you're just are in those feelings of what the project is. And it's they're not particularly formal surveys, but I I use them. I go through old surveys all the time to find ideas that I had, find reflections that I had. If I feel like a relationship is moving in a certain way with a client, maybe that I had had a relationship with a previous client, I'll go back and look at those surveys and be like, okay, I'm seeing these X, Y, and Z happening, and they're pretty similar to this past project. And what did I learn from that the last time? So, it's always trying to get better, always trying to learn.
Continuous improvement.
Yeah,
How do
totally. And
you,
that's part of being a person.
yeah, well, it is self-reflective person. So
True.
how do you differentiate yourself from other consultants?
Sure. So, um, when I was working in marketing for companies, when I was an employee, we had to occasionally hire out consultants. And so I have been part of the interviewing process, the hiring process, the working with process, and the aftermath process of, hiring consultants. And many of the consultants we hired were great, but time and again, I kept seeing instances where either the consultant left us with a framework that just didn't fit our organization. It required too much hands and time than we actually had. I felt like occasionally there were some real smoke and mirrors aspects to the services they were selling us and then providing us. Um, you know, I think that, and also I really didn't like that, there were a lot of consultants who were like, oh, well, you want to do this. So here are all the services that we're going to do to meet this need. And oftentimes these service packages were full of things that we didn't need. And it didn't feel like the consultants were actually working with us to understand and address our immediate problems. It started feeling, I mean, it is, but it started feeling transactional. And so when I started my consultancy, I really wanted to focus on creating a practice where my service, there was a lot of clarity and transparency around what I was doing, that there was explanation behind the processes that I was taking. I want my clients to understand what I'm doing and how it impacts them. So that was really important to me. It was also really important to me to create a practice that is really rooted in tailored services. So, what I mean by that is every client I meet with, I, they're like, oh, I want to increase my impact on social media, just generic. Instead of me being like, ah, here's our social media package that has platforms that you don't use and has this that you don't need and has this that's probably not not even something your company needs at this point in time. Instead, what I do is we talk, we I get to understand their needs, where they're at, and have and understand what their budgetary end looks like for the project, as well as what does their organizational end look like? What do they have in-house to support the work that we're doing, right? Their needs, it doesn't, my work should not stop when I'm gone. It should be
Mhm.
something that is repeatable and understood. And so that became, I think, probably what is the hallmark of my consulting business is really understanding where people are at and really meeting them where they're at. Because of that, I'm very lucky that almost, I would say 99% of clients I work with come back to me. And some of them, I have one client where we started, her business had just started. She needed some market research done. And she had a bunch of other things that she wanted to do, but she understood, this is where my budget is at right now. This is the critical understanding piece for me. So I did this small project for her, was within her budget at the time. And as her business has continued to grow and thrive over the last 5 years, we continue to work with each other. And it feels so wonderful to be invited back into something as important and personal as someone's business.
Out of your experience working with marketing consultants when you were hiring consultants, that out of that came the core principles of your consulting practice, right? So tell me, you said when we talked earlier that you structure your practice around four key principles. Will you share what those are?
Well, tragically, I don't have them written down in front of me. So we definitely have tailored marketing. I am very passionate about approaching things from an authentic place. So authenticity within marketing, rather, So looking into what the business is itself, as opposed to creating these benchmarks of like, oh, I'm going to be another Google. It's like, you don't need to be another Google. You can be yourself. So authentic marketing is definitely part of it. Transparent communication and clarity of process is very much a part of that. And, I think that I'm so sorry, I don't remember what the fourth one.
I think the fourth one was goal setting was
Oh, yes. Gosh, I'm sorry. Yes, goal setting. My God, I mentioned it before. Yes, goal setting because, marketing is, sorry, it's Monday. Marketing is marketing, like I said, can be really smoke and mirrors. And so having these places where this is how we define success, this is how we define success within the project, this is how we define success within your business. So using that as a place to measure our impact from, I think is, as someone who is an analyst and, that's, I want hard data that I'm helping. I want hard data that what we're doing is impacting you positively. And if it's not, we need to revisit that and we need to figure out what we need to do.
love that. When we talked earlier, you mentioned that you're, and this may have changed, but that you're currently between active clients after a major client shut down. And you said that almost never happens now. So, what's going on? Take me inside your brain
Yeah.
and if you've got those niggling voices and how you're managing this being between projects differently than you might have 5 or 10 years ago.
Well, happily, I'm not between projects anymore.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah, yeah. When I, this last time of hitting a place where I was between projects, I feel like I've handled the best. I really feel like I've grown into a consultant with how I've dealt with things this time. In the past, a lot of anxiety, freaking out, spinning wheels. Oh my God, I'm never gonna work again. But now I'm at a place where time and just the hard data of it says that I am gonna work again. I am gonna get another client. So I do a lot of outreach. I have a really, really big professional network, which is wonderful. So a lot of one-on-one outreach. I do a lot of looking at job boards and stuff like that. But I've also found that I've been doing a lot more speakerships lately, and so that has also kind of entered into my lead generation kind of ecosystem. So now I think where I am now and being, or was a couple weeks ago, with being between projects from, where I am now compared to earlier on, I have a prospecting apparatus that I always have going on in the background, no matter if I'm working with clients or not. And that's all prospecting done on my end. So outreach, applying for programs, applying for grants, actually spending time on like LinkedIn or other job boards and, kind of getting a lay of the land that way.
What so important was that you've got this prospecting process system that goes whether you're busy with clients or not. So that
That has been life changing, life changing. I have a certain amount of hours I commit myself every week to do prospecting. Sometimes prospecting is working on a case study and posting on LinkedIn. Sometimes it's doing a bunch of direct outreach. Sometimes it's reaching out to companies or consultants that I find inspiring to, see what they're doing, see what they're up to. So, you know, I challenge myself to be creative in my prospecting, and I'm really I'm really happy this past round of being between clients that I had a system that I have confidence in that's set in place.
There's another thing you said that I think is really important is that initial the at first there was when you were between clients there was, I'm never going to work again, and I can so totally relate to that. It takes me back to my consulting career of project ends. It's like, am I ever going to get another one? Was that, and
Yeah.
over time you have been in this business long enough that yes, I'm going to get another project. So that little voice in your head that's freaking out running around going, again. You can calm it
Yeah.
down and say, that's just not true. I always get another project. And then now with your prospecting system in place, you have you have a process to ensure that you're going to continue to get projects.
Yeah, and it also like soothes that anxious part of my brain because I'm doing it. I am doing this. I do this every week. There's no pause, or like you had mentioned earlier in my career when I was, with clients and I was like, all right, I'm doing this client and like I knew when the project would end, but for whatever reason I would get so devoted to the project that I would forget that I am also part of the project and that
Yes.
I need to care for my business just as much as I care for someone else's business.
Yes, so true. And that is such a, I mean, but it's pretty common with consultants. We get busy with the
Yes.
projects, we let the marketing go, then we have to build the marketing back up, then we get another project, and oh,
Yes.
it's crazy. So I work primarily with consultants who struggle with feast or famine. So they have
Hmm.
inconsistent, unpredictable monthly revenue. Do you, any more now that you're 15 years into this, do you struggle with feast or famine?
I'm in a interesting place right now. And that is because of a very unfortunate situation I had with a former client. Um, so, you know, I should not be in a famine place at the moment, but, this was a situation of a client ghosting me on a really massive invoice. So now
Hmm.
kind of having to, instead of having this money that I've very much earned here to kind of support me in this, because, the October through December is always a very mixed bag with consulting. Like you either get a ton of projects or you're like, all right, I'm going to focus on my own infrastructure for a couple months. So, I was feeling really good about finally having something set up where when I hit this period that I'm in now, that I had set myself up with a safety net to support myself through this. Because I am going to get more clients. It just might be a little bit. And so it's it's a weird place being in a feast and famine situation. But for the most part, I my income has been very stable, I would say, for the past few years. And that has been because of really proactive outreach. And it has been a lot of relationship developments. Like I said, my clients are people who I think are just wonderful, and I love working with them. And thankfully, they feel the same about me. So, I have a lot of repeat business, so that always tends to be feeding my tunnel, or my lead tunnel and all of that. But yeah, as far as feast or famine, I feel like getting my operations and my prospecting really locked in where, like I said, I have X amount of hours I do a week of it. And that has really helped free me from that consistent feast or famine feeling.
Yeah. You're not having to chase clients.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very much so.
I'm going to switch to future. Is your consulting practice delivering the lifestyle you dreamed of?
Yes, in many ways, yes. And, I am someone who really values autonomy and, both in my work and in my life. And this has given me a way, I feel, despite all the stresses and stuff, I feel very free in my life for how I have decided to pursue work and employment. I, and yeah.
Are you ahead or behind of where you thought you would be by now, 15 years in?
I, that's a really good question. I 15 years ago, I would have never saw myself doing this. I had too much fear around instability and my own ability to have the grit to do this. There's a lot of people. I was just talking to a friend yesterday who was like, "Oh yeah, I could never do what you do. Like I couldn't do it. Like I just the mental thing of it, like I can't. Like that's why I choose to have a job." And so 15 years ago, no, I wouldn't have thought I am where I am now. But I'm really happy with where I am. I'm really proud of myself. I'm making great connections. Every step, well, not every step's a step forward. Most steps are steps forward. But you know, I give myself a lot more grace than I did before. And it makes me, I think, a better consultant for it.
Certainly better peace of mind for it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just striving not to be stressed out.
So, where do you see your practice in the next 3 to 5 years?
So I would client work is always going to be part of my practice. In the next 3 to 5 years, I have in the past 6 months been really invested in developing some workshop programs. I work with a lot of small businesses and I do a lot of consulting, or, I do a lot of initial consultations with small businesses who just don't have the capital to work with me, which is completely fine. But I still want to be able to give folks who might not be able to afford the full one-on-one consulting experience access to what it is that I'm teaching because it is valuable. I all of my clients are succeeding for following the practices that we've developed together. And so I really want to step more into the teaching space. I love teaching. I also mentioned I'm doing more speakerships and stuff now. I'd like to be pursuing more of that. And yeah, I just want, yeah, I want things to continue to get smoother and I want to continue to learn. And, I feel like every year I get closer and closer to feeling truly stable and secure. And, I'm really grateful for that. And I'm looking forward to that trend just continuing.
What do you think that are the biggest challenges you're going to face in achieving that goal of moving more into the workshops and the teaching component and speaking?
So far, so, there's obviously like differentiation, right? What do I bring to the table that's different from a zillion other marketing consultants? So, that differentiation is really important. But as far as launching it, I am very, so far since I made this goal of wanting to do workshops and speaking more earlier this year. I wrote that on my like big goal list. And since then, for speakerships, I get contacted really regularly to speak at events. So I think, I'm in the place of building more contacts and networks within it and expanding the types of events that I'm speaking at and stuff like that. So just kind of building that process. As far as workshops go, what I'm teaching is unique and what I'm teaching is has very real world value. And so I think in that instance, for me, it's more of committing to the architecture and actually creating and actually putting the messaging out there. This past weekend, I had been anti having a newsletter for a very long time just because I didn't have the capacity for it. And so this past weekend, I'm like, all right, if I really want workshops and speaking engagements to really take off, I need to be talking to my audience. So that's where I'm headed.
Okay, so you're adding a new marketing activity.
Yeah, totally. And I can add it now because I have the capacity to add it. I have enough things to talk about. You know, I have the vision that I can communicate to people. And also, I I think sometimes, and I tell my clients this all the time, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to send this. It's embarrassing. I don't want to like, I don't want to like ask people to join my workshop." And so it's also just that like those kind of like feelings. It's like, come on, you're
Yeah,
fine.
a little bit of that self-doubt
Yeah,
sneaking
exactly.
in.
Exactly.
No, it never completely goes away. It kind of comes in and sneaks in every once in a while.
Sure, sure. But it's the ability to differentiate from those two voices has changed my life.
Love it. As we near the end of the podcast, I have a couple rapid fire wrap up questions.
Excellent.
So,
I'm ready.
so the first question is, what is one book, podcast, or resource that's been invaluable to your consulting practice?
Um, so as far as resources go, for me, something that has been incredibly useful has been I spend a lot of time on Reddit. And so I really have gotten a lot from like the Reddit small business and marketing forums of just working by yourself can be really lonely and it's nice to feel like there's an ecosystem of people who are also with it in me together who get all this craziness. So yeah,
Okay. So Reddit
finding
is
community.
finding your community on Reddit. What is one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you started consulting?
That you can do it, that you can totally do it. You have the strength and the ability and the smarts and the drive to do it. You can do it. It's going to be hard, but that doesn't mean you can't do it.
Awesome. Yes, that's an important piece of advice all consultants need when they're starting out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we all need to hear that.
We do. Yes. And this last question is the most important question. How
All
can
right.
listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about you and your work?
Absolutely. Probably the best place to find me is my website. It's kitfriday.com. And I am also on LinkedIn somewhat sporadically, but my website's probably the best place to find me.
Okay, so kitfriday.com. And I will also put the link in the show notes. Well, Kit, it has been fantastic talking to you today. I really appreciate it. And for all you listeners out there, until next time, keep thriving through. Kit's story is a powerful reminder that the path to consulting confidence isn't always quick or linear. Sometimes it takes years to truly step into your expertise and value what comes naturally to you. But here's what I love most about this conversation. Kit didn't wait until she felt 100% confident to start. She moved forward despite the self-doubt, built her practice despite the fear, and gradually learned to trust herself through evidence, through client wins, through showing up consistently. If you're sitting there right now thinking you're not ready or questioning whether your skills are valuable enough, I want you to hear Kit's message. You can totally do it. You have the strength, the ability, the smarts, and the drive. It's going to be hard, but that doesn't mean you can't do it, and it doesn't mean it's not worth it. Start by paying attention to what comes easily to you. Those aren't skills to dismiss. They're your competitive advantage. And if you're feeling isolated in this journey, remember that finding your community, whether it's on Reddit forums, like Kit mentioned, or in other spaces, can make all the difference. You can connect with Kit at kitfriday.com. All the links and resources from today's episode are in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, keep thriving through.